I am now recording. I
Okay,
got
good.
it. All right.
Good.
Good evening.
Okay.
Welcome to MELS 601 coaching session on Thursday. This is August 29th. We appreciate all of you being with us here tonight. I'm here, Dr. Stebbin, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Revis, Dr. Crawford. We have any other 601 instructors online with us tonight? I did not see them, but
I'm here. Dr. Stone.
Dr. Stone's here. Oh, there he is. No picture on his. He must have an old computer with no camera either. So.
Dale, John's having some issues. He's trying to get logged on.
All right, John, Dr. Shepard's going to join us
Yes.
as well. So I think we've got about a full house tonight. We're glad that you came out with us tonight. I had a call on the way here tonight. I want to clarify a couple of things. Our sessions are live. We record all sessions and we post them. Your attendance at live sessions is not required. However, it is highly encouraged. But we will, if you have school duties, other issues, we understand those kinds of things. This isn't an asynchronous program. You don't have to be live with us, but it probably to be your benefit if you are. So that's the first thing. Please remember, if you can't do Tuesday or Thursday nights, you can watch the video. We'll make it as user-friendly as possible. We find that if we just can these videos, if we just come online and just make a series of videos and put them up like when we first started with WebEx, nobody ever watches them, or we could get a No-Joe's franchise. Everybody goes to sleep watching them. They tend to be much more user-friendly if we do them live. Now, we've got a vault of these things. We could just trot them out every semester and go home, but that doesn't work well in this program. We've tried that. As I said, prior to Zoom, we tried a year of WebEx webinars where we would go to a room and record these. Didn't work at all. Very, very poor results. And so Zoom has allowed us to be live. There is something about working without a net, being live, that heightens our sense of urgency, and it seems to do the same for students. So we'd love to have you live every week. If you can't, we understand. That's number one. Number two, the weekly turn-ins are for your edification, for your pacing. If it works better that you turn in on Tuesdays, then turn in on Tuesday. If you have a weekend commitment that precludes you from working on the weekends, and you can get it knocked out by Tuesday, that'll be fine as well. We don't take all points and do those kinds of things. The issue becomes if you get later and later, you do get behind. But if you work on a Tuesday to Tuesday format, that's fine with us as well. The important thing is doing the work and keeping up. And so don't let the Sunday deadline hinder you either. So that's a couple of housekeeping things before we start tonight. I'm answering questions as we go. All right, so that's that. So tonight, we're here to talk about the app sale tonight. That is the first of the 6 evidences. First document I'm going to pull up is from Dr. Stedman. He is in the process of making you a helpful hints document to kind of guide you through this process. And he's only got part of it tonight, and that's a good thing. We don't want to overload you tonight. But the first thing we need for you to understand is the big picture. What you're doing through this task stream portfolio of 6 evidences is you're building a school improvement plan. The app sale is the first of those, and it's the most important because it's about instruction. That's our core competency in the school business is instruction, student achievement. And that's what this one is about. So if you were doing, so when Dr. Crawford gets his template from Guilford County Schools to build his school improvement plan every year, he has a section for instruction or academics. He has a section for professional development, for developing and empowering his teaching staff. That's the first 2 that we'll work with this semester, is the app sale and the app tell, and those would serve as those 2 sections of his school improvement plan. We have 4 others, as I told you last time, that we'll get to later, but understand the process that we're putting you through is what you would expect to be doing if you were a sitting school principal across North Carolina. North Carolina General Statute 115C are the public school laws of North Carolina. There are 585 of them. You don't have to memorize them. I have, but I had time on my hands. And that's what I do is law and policy. And so 288, 115C 288's duties and responsibilities of the principal. And there are legal responsibilities that you have, and chief among those, first one on the list, is that you have to develop a school improvement plan for continuous improvement every year. And so you're going to have to go through this process every year of developing an instructional plan, a staff development plan, a master schedule, a school and community involvement plan, a cultural advocacy plan that addresses your teacher working conditions survey. In South Carolina, it's called the Advanced Ed Survey. And you'll put those 5 together into your final one, which is your school improvement plan. That's what you do as a principal. That's what we're training you to do here. If you can learn this process, you will be miles ahead when you become a principal. So that's what we're starting. So to understand, the APSO is the first of these 6 evidences. So the first thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to get email permission from your principal to form or take the lead of a PLC. Now, we prefer you to form a PLC, but we understand that that may be difficult to do. And so, but then you're going to need permission to take the leadership role in an existing PLC. For those of you who have multiple students at the same school, like Bertie and Greer, and we have some other pairs across the state, only do one and switch the lead. Don't wear your faculty out. So we're looking for you either to form one or to lead one is what we're looking for. I'm going to kind of call on people tonight as we go through, and trust me, they've not planned or prepared this, but I'm going to call on Dr. Hamilton. She's an elementary principal in Wilmington at Parsley. I'm going to call on her at this time to speak to how the school improvement planning process works at her elementary school.
Well, at our school, we always start by looking at our test data, and we look and see the areas that maybe we have a gap that we need to address, or we have a more affluent population with a lot of children identified academically gifted, so we have to particularly look at them and their growth through EVOS to determine whether or not we are extending the learning of our children who are identified as academically gifted. And so we look at that, and then the people that have been elected to our school improvement team, and you do need to elect them to your team, and you also have to have parent representatives. You work using your data, using the research-based programs and approved processes that you have through your district to determine what specifically you're going to do to help each of the children groups, reading, math, science, whatever goals you have set, wherever you see that there's a need for improvement, to work with them to make sure that you are doing specific measurable things that you can observe, you can measure, you can take data on to see if these actions that you are planning on taking are helping the children grow and improve. We also have, just like Dr. Lamb just said, we have to look at other things like our teachers' working conditions survey and things of that nature to determine our safety. We have to have a safety part in our school improvement plan. You have to have all these pieces together in your school improvement plan, because school's not just about one thing. It's about this whole multitude of things that come together to make school. And you are required every year to go through to make this plan, and then it is an action. It's not something just put on a shelf. It is an actual action that you are monitoring. You're taking data throughout the year on a regular and routine basis so that you know immediately if something's not working, so that you can make that plan, a change in that plan. It's a living document. It's not one thing you make at the beginning of the year and forget about it. But it really does sort of keep your true north set on guiding what you through your data, have determined that you need to make improvements in. And then when you're keeping that track of that data, by the end of the year, it's not a surprise if you didn't make the data. It's not a surprise if you did make your goals and reach your goals, because you've been tracking that progress throughout the year.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. See,
You're welcome.
These 6 work together. They are not just one-offs. These 6 evidences work together in combination to round out the entire school program. And I'm so glad Dr. Hamilton mentioned, you can't just focus on one thing and let everything else go. You have to be able to see the big picture. So you're going to develop an action plan, a professional growth plan, a marketing plan, a master schedule, a cultural advocacy plan. You're going to put all those together into a school improvement plan, and you're going to have it in a graphic organizer. And and you can go up to school buildings all around North and South Carolina, and that's what you print out in the principal, and that's somewhere in their office on a board where you can monitor what we're supposed to be doing in all of these areas at any one time. You'll put that together in your 6th and final evidence in the 5th task of that evidence. That one has 6 in it. In the 5th task, you'll put all that together, and that becomes the working copy of your school improvement plan. And we're doing the first leg of that with the APSEL. We're coming up with our first action plan for student growth, for student learning. That's what we're looking at. So we're going to form our PLC. We're going to get people who are relevant to that PLC. We're going to know what their qualifications are, but then we're going to do a data dive. That's the first thing that Dr. Hamilton just said to you. We're going to look at our school data. We're going to look at our EVOS scores, our standardized test scores. We're not going to just pick things that, we want kids to feel better about this or that or the other. Well, that's not measurable. That's why you look at your standardized test scores. That's where your data dive has to start, with your standardized test scores. And that's why I said it's not appropriate to do discipline here. This is the instructional piece of your school improvement plan. We're going to get to discipline and safety later on, but not here. This is about what we're going to do. This is about a professional staff member delivering instruction to students every day. That's what this one is about. How are we going to go about that? Where are our gaps? What can we add to that program? Dr. Jamal Crawford's with us tonight. Dr. Crawford, he's kind of at the other end of the spectrum. He's at a different kind of elementary school that has a different set of problems, but he is still required to do the same thing. We'll let Dr. Crawford speak to his process.
So good evening, everyone. And to those of you I messed up on Monday night, we'll get that fixed. But one of the things I wanted to point out to you was that one of the things Dr. Shepard said was you also have to look at a school safety plan. And the reason I wanted to start with that first is because just yesterday, a student at High Point University was arrested with a 9mm, a shotgun, and a plan to do a mass shooting at High Point University. And my school's in the backyard of High Point University. I mean, literally right across there. I can take a rock and throw it from my office onto the property. And so I had to switch gears here in this first few days of school and kind of ramp up that part of the process first, not because it's anything new. Unfortunately, we've been dealing with this nonsense for some time, but because now we've got a situation that occurred right in our backyard. As a matter of fact, the greenway, there's a greenway that connects my property with High Point U, and that's actually one of my safe schools. That's one of my evacuation sites. So that's one of the things you have to think of as well. Whereas Dr. Hamilton is in a more affluent area, I have, and High Point in general is, but I have some of the most economically impacted students in Guilford County. Right now, at last check, my free reduced lunch rate was 84%, and I think that's low because I think many of my Hispanic parents are not completing the free reduced lunch form, and for obvious reasons, given what's going on around us with that particular conversation. So we're at 84%, and like I said, I think that's lowballing it. And so with us, yes, we have to contend with what the data says with regard to proficiency, but we also have to look at addressing growth as well, especially when you have a group of kids that are coming to you beginning in kindergarten with challenges that you have to look to grow. And so while at times proficiency may be a challenge, we have to look and base our school improvement plan on what the growth says. And so for this year, for us, that particular aspect, growth, worked in our favor. Particularly in math, we actually grew 2 whole standard deviations in math from not meeting growth last year to meeting it pretty successfully this year. And so those are just the things that you deal with on the academic side of that, on top of dealing with, how do you deal with those things that lead you to be able to get to school. So in other words, kids that are hungry, kids that are worried about if the lights are going to be on when they get home, kids that are worried about if mama's boyfriend beat them up or if dad got locked up last night. That's pretty difficult to have to deal with before you can start learning about reading and math. And so we also have to, in our school improvement plan, in many cases, contend with those issues before we can even get to the actual teaching of what the old 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Thank you. All right. The reason I've got a couple questions here about should we start with a particular area of our data or bigger? That's what your PLC determines. You look at all of your data and then you find your most pressing need. It may be a subgroup. It may be a grade level. It may be a particular course or subject if you're in secondary. That's what your data dive is about. You have to determine what your most pressing need is in terms of academics.
And Dr. Lamb, that's going to come in task 2 when they get to task 2.
Exactly. That's the thing. My school already has a school improvement team. Everybody's school has a school improvement team. It's required by law. Should I just meet with them or you're creating a PLC, not a school improvement team. You're creating a PLC, and that's what yes, you should create your own PLC, but everybody has a bigger school improvement team. We're not going that big. We're going small. We're going PLCs that feed that team. And so that's what we're going to do. But Dr. Crawford is right. There are all these things that you can't separate what's most important. School safety was most important this week in High Point. I was high school principal during both the Jonesboro, Arkansas shooting and the Columbine shooting.
Right.
And during that month, school safety was more important than anything else that month because of all the bomb threats and calls in. And I was in a major city as a high school principal, had 3,000 students in it. And it was that was kind of not a fun time. So you've got to understand there's different pieces. This semester, we want you to focus on the academic and staff development pieces, not to preclude the others, but that has to be our focus this semester. And the reason why we're going over this before we actually dive into the app cell is you may be asked these questions. Why are you doing this? When you send this, the first thing you're going to do is ask permission to form a PLC. And the question you may get in return is why? What are you doing? One of the answers I don't like for you to give is, well, it's just a grad school requirement. No, you need to know more than it's just a grad school requirement. You need to be able to articulate what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you use the right terminology, then you're going to have a lot better result in terms of the answer that you get back. If you just say, I want to form a PLC because it's a grad school requirement, I'm not sure you're going to get the answer you want to get. But if you can articulate why you're doing what you're doing, we rarely have a problem getting you an opportunity to either form or lead a PLC. When all you say is, I have to, then you don't normally get the result that you want. And so that's why I've spent this 20 minutes kind of coaching you up here on This is what you need to be able to present to your administrative team, to your principal, in order for them to be able to see the efficacy, the value added that this could bring to their school. This is live. This is real. This is not theoretical. You need to be able to add value to your school through this process.
Dr. Lamb, when you get a chance, may I respond to Laura Shipman's
Yeah.
chat? Laura asked the question. She says, I know our research is about PLCs. Do we need to also complete research that is in our PLC theme? That is coming.
Best practices.
Yeah, that's best practices. Now, what you're doing in task 1, and we're going to go over that a little more tonight before we leave, you are just doing basic research on what is a PLC, what does a PLC look like. It's just general stuff about, so you'll understand what you're doing. Task 2 is where you dig into the data. Task 3 is where you actually, once you identify what your problem is, you're going to be more specific with the research at that point, because you're going to start concentrating on what you have identified as your problem. So whatever your PLC theme is, or whatever your problem is, that will come in task 3.
That'll come in task 3. But you need to be able to articulate what if you ask your principal, I want to form a PLC, you at least ought to know what one is and how it works, because they may ask you some questions about that. So you've got to be prepared for those questions, and you got to be prepared for those questions from your PLC members. They're going to ask you as well, what are we doing? Where are we going? What's the purpose of this? When you ask them to serve, you've got to be able to articulate these things like we are to you, you to them. That's the part of this is the knowing part, that's the doing part. You've got to be able to articulate. You can't just say to everybody, will you do this to help me out for my grad class? No, they won't be bought in. And it's just going to be an exercise in futility.
And Dr. Lamb, one other thing too is that, from a principal's perspective too, they need to know exactly what you're doing so it's a non-threatening.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Stone. I was getting ready to, I'm trying to find Dr. Stone in my list here. There's Dr. Shepard too. And I wanted for you two to weigh in. Dr. Shepard from the high school perspective, and Dr. Stone from a central office perspective. This thing's got to be non-threatening, and it's got to fit. It's got to fit in the context of your school. Dr. Shepard, go.
I don't think he can. He's having some problems on his end.
No, I got it fixed. I'm good.
Did you? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I had some tech difficulties there, but my tech fairies fixed it for me here. Luckily, I'm still at school. Yeah, I mean, you want to approach your principal about this and work with your principal. I told my folks that on Tuesday night. That's a conversation you're going to want to schedule some time with them and the administrative team and instructional coach to say, hey, I'm doing a deep dive with some of our academic data, and that's where your focus needs to be in this PLC. I think we need to emphasize that a lot. Your PLC needs to be about learning, and it needs to be learning focused, needs to be about academic focus. And so you're going to take a holistic approach to it, but you got to boil it down. And I'm not sure if there's a competent principal out there, an administrative team, if they have a teacher on their staff who says, hey, I'm going to do a deep dive in your data and let's work on this together. And I want to identify some possible needs that we may have. And can I work with you and some other teachers to develop some instructional strategies as part of a collaborative team to help meet the needs of our students? And then I want to create an action plan and present it to you about how we can go through that process. I think if you present it in that way to an administrative staff in a very competent way, they're not going to balk at that. They want that. They want our teachers to do that. And so I think part of changing your lens in this 601 course is looking through that lens as an administrator and having that discussion with an administrative team and looking at your data to be able to say, here's some needs that we have. Maybe it's in a particular subgroup. Maybe it's in a proficiency level of an EOC course, whatever it may be. But really having that discussion and say, these are areas I'd like to navigate through and establish a collaborative team of teachers to work on some of these and create a plan to solve some of these issues for our students. If you formulate it that way, I don't think your administrative team is going to give you any issues with it.
Yes. If you're prepared, if you know what you're talking about and why you're doing what you're doing, and it adds value, and it's not just a grad school requirement, 99% of the time when one bounces back to me as department chair, this student can't do the PLC, and I go back and I, will you send me the email string? And first thing I see is I've got this grad school requirement, and basically I'm being forced to do this. Well, nobody wants to join you to do that. You got to know what a PLC is to start with. You got to do your research and know what norms and values, your big idea. You got to know all those things, and you got to be able to articulate what Dr. Shepard was just talking about. Dr. Stone, from a superintendent's perspective, now Dr. Stone just retired recently as superintendent in Caldwell, and he was in a couple of other counties. Dr. Stone, from a superintendent's perspective, what is your perspective in terms of teachers wanting to get involved, or prospective administrators wanting to get involved in data dives?
I think it would be very well welcomed by the central services or central office folks. And just to reiterate some things, other things that have been said too, is make sure you do it right. Because if you go in with the PLC and as a superintendent, I'm watching you and you really are not doing a PLC appropriately and it's just not working the way it should, I mean, that will hurt you in the long run. But as far as from a district perspective, I think we welcome teacher leaders, we welcome principal leaders who step up and who say, I'm doing this and here's why. I think make sure if you are at a principal's level, you do let someone in the central services or the district office know about it. But at a teacher's level, by all means, know what you're doing, is that if you've been told, and then keep that principal, be transparent with it, keep that principal informed of the process, and you've got a great buddy there that'll help you.
Yes. This is not the roadblock that many students perceive that it's going to be, and that's our biggest issue tonight. The first night of coaching is getting you over that hurdle to change your lens, that you're not just bothering them. You could actually be an aid and assistance, and you can add value if this is a real process. Now, if you're just going through the motions just to write some things down on a piece of paper, everybody will know it fairly quickly, and you won't be adding any value, and it won't go well for you. But if you take this in the right spirit and that you're going to try to make lives better for children, I think you'll be well received. And so I know you have a lot of fears about sending that email, but if you'll do your PLC research, and if you'll study the APSL and know what you're doing, and be able to answer some questions, I think it'll go really well for you, because you can add value. So that's kind of the first half of class tonight, is getting us over that initial hurdle of doing our first foray into sending the boss an email and wanting to join in. You've got to get over that fear and got to get past that. And once you get past that and conquer that fear, it's going to go really well after that. Now, I want us to shift gears. Thank you all. I want us to shift gears now. Dr. Stedman is going to take the lead, and he's actually going to, and so I think we've covered pretty much everything that's on here. What we're going to go to now, we're going to shift gears. We're going to look at the actual task and prompts of the APSL. And we've covered PLC, the action plan. You know what a competency is. Here are those. And so we're going to start with task one, with prompt one. Dr. Stedman, I'll let you get started.
Okay, Dr. Lamb, we're looking at that. Could we go to the template? I'd rather look at the template with it.
Be glad to.
Okay. And again, please remember, to the left of your Blackboard shell, that is where you go to the template and materials, and that's where you will find everything you needed. Remember, Dr. Lamb, we talked about this on Tuesday night, that if it's in black, you keep it there. If it's in yellow, that means that you got to write something. If it's in red, those are suggestions as what you're to do, and that red goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. So please remember that in all that you do. As we look at prompt number one, And this is going to be in the information that you will get by some point tomorrow. It will be some helpful hints for the APSL. In part one, this is where, first of all, just remember that you've got to begin with your cover page, and the only thing you do is put your name on that page. The second thing that you do is you're doing your school profile. The heading is school profile, and all you're doing there is you're telling the story about your school and your community. That's what you're doing. You're telling a story about your school and your community. And then once you get that, that's when you move in to task one. And I want you to notice, well, when Dr. Lamb gets there.
I am answering questions. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, that's okay. He just pulled back up. Your name there. That's the only thing you do on that page.
Yep.
It's going to be your name.
All right. And then?
Okay, and then your school profile. And you're going to have a heading, school profile, and then you're going to do your school profile. Those are your instructions. You include those instructions. Task one description, if it's in black, that means that you include that in the work that you submit to your instructors when you turn it in to Blackboard for grade. Let's go on.
Dr. Stedman, can you speak to us about school profile? What is it? Where will I find it?
Okay, I told him that a while ago, but I'll say it again. Your school profile. All you're doing, you're telling the story about your school. What does your school look like? What is your community like? You're telling some of the demographic information. This is a time, your school may be a very historical place. If that is, that's good, some helpful information as you tell the story about your school. What does it look like around your school? What do the communities look like? If I went into your school, what does your school look like? It's pretty much anything that you want to tell us as you're telling the story about your school.
And Dr. Stedman, a lot of times when they do advanced ed,
Yes.
this is the beginning of the advanced ed report.
Exactly.
You're right. Advanced ed,
SACS.
SACS, if you don't tell me SACS, you have to do this. And some of this information, you can take it and tweak it as you need to use it for your, it's already out there. Thank you, Dr. Stone, for that.
Yes. Advanced Ed or SACS, as I told you Tuesday night, the first section in those that's your school profile. Don't give us the 40 pages that's in your SACS or Advanced Ed report. Cut it down to a page or less, but give us a good sense of your school. When Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Crawford spoke about their schools tonight, they both gave you a background and profile in those schools, what was important, and then they talked about the context. It was important to know that Parsley, the type of population that they have to be more concerned about their AIG kids than their at-risk kids. Dr. Crawford explained the physical location of his is the issue, but he also talked about his free and reduced lunch. And that gives us a window into what's important in his school. Because we're going to have to adjudicate when you come up with specific activities in your action plan, you say, these are the things that we think will work in our school to fix our problem. We have to look at the appropriateness of those activities. I have a long-winded story that I won't share tonight about a principal that I worked with a long time ago, my Harold story. He picked a completely inappropriate program for his school. He was at an at-risk school, very rural, poor population, and he picked a program that had been run in a private Catholic school in a very affluent suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. He picked it for a program for his school. That it completely went bad the first day was not unexpected by anybody except Harold, unfortunately. That's what we're talking about. We need to know the context of your school so that we can look at the appropriateness of your plan. Is this something that would actually be something that you'd want to present to your school improvement team or your school leadership team? Or when they see these things, they'll say, well, that's just completely nonsensical for the population that we have. I worked for a superintendent one time who said every school in the district had to have AVID. Well, only about 30% of the schools in the district actually qualified to be an AVID school.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else just had to, go fish the other 70% of the school. My wife was at one of those schools that Didn't need Avid at all. It was a laboratory IB school on the campus of Davidson College. If you know anything about that, it was a magnet with 240 kids. They didn't need it. Avid's for kids who were first-time college. Everybody there's parents was a college graduate. Most of them professors at Davidson. What did they need Avid for? That was supposed to be their action plan to improve their academics at their school. And they all looked at him like the nitwit that he was. And that's what we don't want to happen to you. When you present this plan, and you are to present this plan to your administrative team, we don't want side glances of, well, these people just don't know what they're talking about. And so we're going to look at how the efficacy from the data and from your research about the quality of the things that you suggest, but we're also going to look at the appropriateness. Do they match your school? And so that's why that school profile is first and foremost. I will get off my horse now, because that one really causes us some problems, and I'll let Dr. Stedman get back to it.
Dr. Lamb, just as a reminder, as you go back, all of the stuff in black, you need to make sure you read that. Don't do it like we do sometime when we go buy something and we don't read the instructions, and when we get through, we've got parts left over, and then what we bought's not working right, or not standing up right, or sitting right. It's important that you read all of the instructions. Prompt number 1 for task 1. And remember, it's not I, it's not me, it's the candidate. You are the candidate in everything you write from this point on. And it's your team. The candidate and the team, or the candidate and the PLC. So that's the way you should refer to everything in your narrative work from this point on. Again, look at it. With the approval of the school leadership, your principal, you're going to research the tenets and functions of a PLC while assuming a leadership role. You are the leader, so you should, in everything you do, you should show that you are the leader in this process from this point on throughout the entire program. The supported narrative must completely and thoroughly address the following, and this is important. You see where it says PLC research. It's in black, but it's also highlighted in yellow. It's in black because you're going to write it again. You're going to put your heading, PLC research. It's highlighted in yellow because you've got to write something there. And the red tells you what you've got to write or suggest things. The PLC research must include a minimum of 3 sources. And remember, everything you do is in APA format. The research should conclude with a complete description of the candidates. What is your PLC going to look like? In this, you're talking about what is a PLC? How is a PLC formed? What's the purpose of a PLC? And then the expert in PLCs, he's not the only one, but he's the father of PLCs, is Richard DeFore. So one of your minimum of 3 sources must be a Richard DeFore reference on setting up and leading PLCs. Guess what? If you go back to your PLC, your APSL template and materials, guess what we've done? We're nice people, Dr. Lamb. We have given you all kinds of resources that will help you with your research with the APSL. All of this stuff can be used. Again, what is it? Look at it, DeFore. What is a professional learning community? DeFore, charge session PLCs. Everything you need to complete your research is pretty much there. And then if you remember back in week 1, there was some reading that you needed to do there. That's in addition to what you see. PLC norms. What do your, when you establish the norms for your PLC, we've outlined it there for you. So we've given you lots and lots and lots and lots of help to get started, with your 601 class and with the APSL. Now, we're going to give you lots of stuff for the APTEL too, but we begin backing off just a little bit. But we're giving you lots of stuff, so we want you to be successful, and you know exactly what you need to do. But don't deviate from the plan. The template is there. Fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks with the information. Don't come up with your own design of what a template should look like. It should look just like what we're giving you. Don't make it any harder than what it has to be for you. Okay, Dr. Lamb, let's go back to.
All right. Before we move any further, for this research and for the research that you're going to do in task 3. If you don't like our references or you want to dig deeper, I'm stayed on this screen for a reason. When you go into your Blackboard shell, I hope they taught you this in your orientation session, but if they didn't, I'm going to cover it. If you'll look up here next to your My Gardener Web tab where you go to Blackboard, you're going to see a library tab. If you'll click on that library tab, look here. Here's a professional search engine for you right there. You can type in anything you want to type in. You can see all mine's on law and finance, but if you type in
Professional learning communities. Yeah.
and do a search, it will come up with professional articles. Look at there. Who's the very first one that came up? Richard DeFore, because he is the father of professional learning communities. But look at all these different articles that explain that you can find something that fits your school, and when you find a program, you can do the same thing. This is a professional search engine like Eric Search. This is not Google. This is a professional search engine. All of these are refereed journals. All these are not opinion documents. These are all professional research documents that are in Bulldog One. And so you can go over here and you can find all of these articles, and they're all online. They link. It's not like when my Google feed wants me to subscribe to some magazine or journal. These will all open up for you. So this is an excellent resource when you're doing your research. We have the documents we think are most important, and if you just want to use those, that's fine. But if you want to dig deeper, just hit the library tab and go right in and do that.
And Dr. Lamb, when they get to task 3, when they're having to actually build a bibliography thing, they can go to here and find resources for their bibliography. So
that is correct. And so let me get back on my course here, and I'll answer some questions. All right. So we'll go back to. Let me move that out of the way.
Okay, we were on the template.
There we go.
Okay, and that is what you do for the PLC research. And remember, your research is actually a mini research paper, APA style, a minimum of 3 resources, but you're not limited to 3 resources. Most people have more than 3, but you have to have at least 3, and one of them has to be Richard DeFore. The next thing you do, you see PLC selection. It's in black. That means that's your heading. You write PLC selection, then you're going to write about your PLC. How did you go about selecting the people for your PLC, or how are you going to go about it? What was your process? Who is you're actually going to name them, and then you're going to tell us why you picked that person. What are their strengths? What do they bring to the table? What do they do in the school, etc. You're just going to tell a brief bio about those people, what's going, not in great detail, but just enough that we know, about the strengths that they're going to bring to the table.
All right. Let me interject here. We've had several questions on this point. You form an initial PLC. You can do it. It should be based on what you think that where you're going to eventually be going to end up. You look at the qualifications, you initially form your PLC, you do a data dive. You find it's not at all what you thought it was going to be. At that point, you adjust or you add people to help you in that area. You start out with you and 2 more. But you find out, it wasn't math that we need to dive into, it's actually reading. So then you can add up to 3 more from that area. But you start out with a core group of 2 people in your PLC, so that there's 3 of you, and then you add 2 or 3 more. I like to just add 2, but you can add up to another 3 that are specific to what your data tells you. You don't start again. You start with a core of 3, and then you add to it as you need. You might find from your data that you were right all along. You just need you 3, but you might find it wasn't 4th grade, it was 5th grade. We better bring some of those teachers in. That's how you do this. But that's all in the literature. You start with a core of 3, and then you expand it outward as you need to, according to what your data tells you.
Right.
It's a living thing. It's organic. It's not a just one thing, and this is all it can ever be. No, your PLC grows and develops with the complexity of problems that you find when you do your data dive.
And Dr. Lamb, you may have somebody on your team that decides they don't want to be on the team. That's okay. You don't want them on the team if they're not going to be productive. So they may be on your team initially, and then eventually they may not be. Next, when you get to the app tail, you may have to add another person. So
Yes.
you know, so that the PLC selection, you started out with somebody, but that can be a moving target as you progress through the evidences along the way. Okay. And then the last thing is your PLC meeting. You're actually going to conduct a PLC meeting. Now, the purpose of this meeting is that once you have selected the team, you bring them together. They need to understand, you know, what is it that you're doing. You have to understand what you're doing to be able to explain it to them. What is it that you're doing, and what is it you want them to do? What is your vision? What is your purpose? You just lay it out. And at this time, that is when you have already done your research on the norms. You talk to them. These are the norms for our meetings. When are we going to meet? You know, how often are we going to meet? Who is going to take minutes at the meeting? You know, you just kind of set up the parameters of what your meeting is going to look like. Let them ask questions, and then you sit around the table and you kind of hammer out, you know, what it's going to look like. And that can change too, but it basically gives you some structure and a guideline that you're going to be going by at least on a weekly basis with them. And then once you do that, it's not listed on there, but then after that, you're going to, because you've got references up there in your PL research, and you may have it in other places. After that, you're going to have a reference section, and your reference section must be done APA style. You're going to list your references APA style in everything that you do, and then after that, you're going to have an appendices, and your appendices is going to be artifacts that you have used in the narrative work that you've done. And then there may be charts or tables that
large data sets.
Yeah, you're going to do all of that, and that's coming in task 2, and that is what you list anything down there that you want to show us. If you have a picture of you presenting, your picture goes down there as an artifact in the appendices section.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, you're through with prompt 1. That is it for prompt 1. Somebody asked us, their PLC research have a length requirement. It's not going to be a long, cumbersome process, but it needs to cover, you know, as long as you have covered the information needed from there, that's all we're looking for. We're not looking whether it's 5 pages, 10, but we're not looking at those kinds of things.
All right, so let's look at the example. This is the minimum, not the maximum. This is the closest to 3 I've ever seen, and that's why I got her permission to use it. She did a much better job, but we cut it down and did this. School profile, about a page or so. Her introduction, her PLC research was 2 pages. That's the minimum. Selection, 1 page. PLC meeting, 2 pages. And this is just the base information. You'll have more than that, but this is the minimum. This document is a minimum document. This would squeak under the wire to get a 3. We don't want to see documents like this. We're training you to be accomplished, not proficient. But because we always get questions, how much should it be? What's the least? This is the least. If it's not at least this much, it's not going to pass. Now, we can tell you what's going to pass and not going to pass. We know because we do this every day. This is what we do for a living. And so So look at this document. If you're not sure, well, how much? I could spend a month on this. Yeah, you could. You got to adjudicate how much time you got versus what you got to do. But this is the minimum that we will accept. If it's not at least this good, it's not gonna go. You see there's data in here. Now, you notice
That's task 2.
she has as we move to, and we're going to cover task 2 tonight, we're going to be done. We're going to cover 1 and 2 tonight. But moving into task 2, one of the things that I want to make sure you understand is, if you have large data sets, we want you to summarize them. She made little tables here, but we call all tables, charts, and graphs are labeled as figures. You take large data sets and summarize them into small pieces, and those large data sets go into your appendices. We're not going to sit and scroll through. You know how long dibbles are in class? They're 17 pages. I am not going to read through 17 pages of dibble data. I'm sorry. I don't have that much patience. I don't have that much time left in my lifetime to read through 17 pages of dibble data. You guys summarize that dibble data for me. And so as we move into task 2, where we start working with data, now data is, I'm a data person. And one of the things that aggravates me the most is you show me some graphic, a table, chart, or a graph, what we call a figure, and you don't point me to what I'm supposed to be learning from that. And so that's how I'm going to start. I'm going to pick up here, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Stedman. I'm going to pick up here with this. Data collection strategies. Go find your data, standardized data, but don't just throw it all in here to get page numbers. So it look, oh, they've got 40 pages in their task 2. Well, 17 of them is just worthless data that I don't know what it means. We want quality stuff. We're looking for quality, not quantity. If you can get the stuff in 4 or 5 pages, I'm happy. But make sure that you summarize these big data sets into smaller sets, and you tell us what's important in that. Right underneath it, if you use the APA format for figures, it tells us right underneath that figure, it says this came from here, and this is what's important in it. That's most important when you get to prompt 1 of task 2 is, when you show me some data, you need to tell me where it came from and what I'm supposed to be looking for in your graphic. If you don't do that, then I'm just confused. So make sure that you do that. So that's the format, and then I'll let Dr. Stedman pick up with criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need.
Okay. You're working with the team that you have put together. You are meeting with them, and as a team, you are going to decide, okay, what criteria are we going to use to identify our pressing need? What process are we going to use? Now, you're going to use test data. So you've got to pull test data, and the test data would be end of grade testing, end of course testing for high schools. It's going to be a benchmark testing. If you're in a elementary school, any of Dr. Crawford, any of you, those things that I think you said, did you say M-Class was out? Any of those kinds of things that you would use with your primary assessments. If you're going to look at those as well if you're in an elementary school. So it's anything that's going to give you information, and you're going to look at what are you going to do. You're sitting down, and it's a collaborative effort. You're going to look at it together, and right there, you're narratively going to talk about. You're going to explain the process that you're going to use to try to get to identifying that need. Dr. Lamb, anything else that I missed from that?
All right, we've got a couple questions here on that. You're exactly right. The question is, timeline, we've answered that question. September the 8th is when the rough draft is due. That's of task 1, and make sure that it's complete. We don't grade partial tasks. If there's one or two prompts, the first draft should have both prompts addressed. If it does, we don't send us up and say, am I on the right track so far? No, make sure you've done the complete thing when you put it in. And so, should you use your 17-18 metric school data instead of last year? They want you release what you use what you've got. The most recent is 17-18. They've not released the high school data even yet, and so you can't use it. You can't sit around and wait on it. So you use the latest data that you have, and if it's a year old, that's fine. I mean, that's the latest you've got, so that will be fine. Rough draft is 9-8. Again, rough drafts. If we go back to this, as you can see, task 1 has one prompt, but it has 3 different parts. Make sure that when you turn your rough draft of task 1 in, it has PLC research, PLC selection, PLC meeting. Do not turn me in one that only has the school profile on it. That'll make me madder than a wet hen. Do the whole task, turn it in so that we can look at it and give you feedback on the whole thing. Trust yourself, it'll be okay. All right, and so 17-18 middle school data's not been released. If the data from last year's not been released, go to the year before. Use what you've got most recent. Okay, and so John.
Dr. Lamb, they just got I just talked with the testing person in our county. Principals got it yesterday, and next week it should go out to everybody.
Yes, it will be here shortly.
September 4th is when the data is embargoed until in Guilford.
Right.
Yeah. So it's coming quickly. You'll have it by the time you need it. 3 or 4 or 5 days from now, it'll be there. But use the most current. Make this relevant. Use the most current data. All right, back to Dr. Stedman.
Very quickly again, the data collection strategies. You've come up with your strategies. Then you're coming up with the criterion process for identifying. You're coming up with a plan for identifying the most pressing need. Then the collaborative data analysis. You and your team are going to sit down. You're going to collaborate, and you're going to look at everything. You're going to analyze it. You're going to disaggregate it. You're going to break it down. You're going to look at everything and see the reason the team is good. What you see is one thing, but somebody else may see something you don't see. And so you have dialogue about it, and you're going to talk about that collaborative data analysis there. Once you've done that, your team is going to come together, and after you're going to, as a team, you're going to say, okay, based on everything that we've looked at, based on everything that we have here, this is what we are identifying as our most pressing need. Now, once you identify that most pressing need, you still got to get permission from your principal to move forward with that. That most pressing need may already be identified in another way somewhere. So there's always that next most pressing need. So you may have to go to the next most pressing need if that's what your principal wants you to do. So you present it, but if your principal says, okay, we're already doing enough in that area, and this is what I want you to work with, guess what you're supposed to work with? Mm-hmm. Whatever it is that your principal wants you to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about that, Dr. Lamb?
Well, I want to reiterate. This is nitpicking, but I want to reiterate. You need to decide up front before you do your data analysis what your criteria is going to be to identify your most pressing need. Is it low test scores? Is it reading? Is your school improvement plan about math this year? You've got to make some. Is it going to be? Are we going to work on, is we going to look at small groups that we can impact? Or are we going to look at bigger groups? Are we going to look at whoever has the biggest score gap? Are we going to do gap times the number of students in that particular group? How make those decisions before you look at your data in terms of this is our priorities. That way it will be clear to you after you look at your data what your list of priorities are, most pressing needs, and you probably need to come up with about 3.
Dr. Lamb, they need to be careful too. Again, it's like you said, a subgroup is that those are workable groups. Be careful. Talk to them, Dr. Lamb, what you said before about working with exceptional children programs only?
I would not pick exceptional children's. I would not. You cannot adjust their instructional program. They're on IEPs, folks. That's where I was headed. Thank you for reminding me, but that's where I was headed with that. When we start looking at subgroups, I'm going to pick this group. They've got the biggest gap and they've got the smallest number. We can have the biggest impact. Well, what group is that? Well, that's our EC group. No, don't pick EC unless you're an EC teacher. And even then, I would caution you not to pick EC. You cannot be adjusting what they do. They're on IEPs and you can't be changing that. You come in and say, well, I want to change what we're doing with EC kids. They might throw you out of the building. It could become a problem. And so I would not pick EC.
And there are some exceptions to the rule, but you need to talk with us specifically if that
Exactly.
applies, not in general.
Yeah, and you need to be in that line of work in order to do that. ELL, English limited proficiency, whatever you want to refer to those, they're referred to different ways. I probably wouldn't pick them either unless I was their teacher. And even then, that's probably not the best thing to do.
Yeah, CTE, yes, Joseph, you can work with your
CTE.
program, yes.
It's a federal program, and there's some restrictions, but yeah, you can work with CTE on what's the name of their exam? I'm having a senior moment here on their
North Carolina final exams.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Dr. Shepard. I knew we had a high school person here for some reason.
Which are going away probably as of this year.
Yeah.
Work keys.
Work keys, yes. So you can adjust their instruction. Don't remember this is an instructional action plan. Don't form a plan for kids that you can't change their instruction. That won't work well for you. You go over and tell the EC teachers, we're going to start doing this, and they're going to tell you, no, we're not. These kids are on IEP. I'm not going to lose my job for you. ELL's the same way. That's pretty. My experience as a principal at a school that had the largest amount of ESL kids, we called them back then in Charlotte, and Dr. Crawford actually followed me there years later. We were both at Eastway. I was there when it was a junior high. He was there when it was a middle school. We had the largest ESL population in Charlotte. We had more of them than we had regular kids. If you're at a school like that, you may be able to do something with ESL. But if they're a small group, if you just got a small group and it's pretty programmatic and it's already planned you're probably not going to be able to do much with that. We could have done something at Eastway because everybody was ESL. Even me, I picked up a bad accent. But not usually that small a group. And here's another thing. Now, every kid counts. No child left behind. Every child learns. But here's another thing, too. We have people who want to do, well, I want to do this program for these sixth grade girls. There's 4 of them. If you moved them all from a 1 to a 4, it would not change the outcomes in your school. I don't like looking at things that way, but you're also looking to have some impact here. You're trying to move the needle. If you work with too small a subgroup, even if you do get them some help, it may not move your school overall. So you're looking to have as broad an impact as you can with this program, because I'll tell you what happens a lot of times. Your school sees what you've done and puts some more resources and people behind this. And it becomes a school-wide initiative. It's not just yours. It becomes something that is a part of what the school is trying to do to close the gap. Now, everybody knows that every public school in North and South Carolina has to have a Closing the Gap program. And that's basically what we're doing here. We're doing the Closing the Gap program. And if yours is good enough, your school may adopt it as a school-wide focus. If you've got a broad enough context and you're working with students that you can actually change their instruction, it may be adopted as something that your school does school-wide. And what a great learning experience that would be. What a feather in your cap if you design something that was that good. And then when you do your most pressing need, of course, in 2, you'll do your data presentation again. That's, again, my pet peeve. Do not give me all pages and miles of data. Summarize the data and tell me what I'm looking at. And so this is exactly what I'm talking about. When you do task 1 and it's due on September the 8th, I want to see all of these. I want to see the school profile, the things in yellow, in that document, PLC research, PLC selection, and PLC meeting. That needs to be in that document. All 4 of those things. The next week, when the next one is due, I want to see all of these things in yellow. I do not want to see one where you just stopped about halfway of the first one and said, tell me how I'm doing. No, that'll bog down the process. So we want both tasks. We want both prompts of task 2, and we want everything that's in yellow in your paper when you turn it into us for our initial review and for peer review. So next week, we're going to talk about task 3 and 4. They don't take as long, and then we're going to broach the topic of peer review starting next week. We'll probably mention a little bit Tuesday night, but we're going to deep dive into peer review next week. I don't want you focused on peer review yet. I need you to be focused on PLCs right now. That we want these to be real and worthwhile, and then we'll talk about peer review next week. All right.
And Dr. Lamb, they will get those helpful hints to me by tomorrow evening at some point,
Yeah.
and it will help you everything that we've talked about. I'm just going to break it down and just put it out there for you. So if you read it and follow it, you should have no problems.
Yeah.
Use your template.
All right. Where's the rest of my ride or die crew here? Dr. Crawford, you got anything to close up? See, this is my PLC. I don't get to be leader much, but this is my bunch right here. This is the crowd that I'd ride into battle with. This is who you're going to start with on your PLC and then expand it. Dr. Stedman and I started, and now look how many we've got. We've expanded to Dr. Crawford. We brought him on next. We got Dr. Hamilton, and then we got Dr. Shepard, and now we've got Dr. Stone, and now we've added Dr. Rivas. We're adding to our PLC people who had value to us as we move into different areas. But this started out as a 2-person PLC, and then now it's up to 7 and growing that work exclusively with 601 add-ons, which is by far our largest group and most important group, because there's no 603 or 605 add-ons if we don't get you through 601. So that's why we focus on this. So any of our folks would like to say something, we're Dr. Stedman and I have exhausted everything we know and told a couple things that we probably didn't know.
No, just reach out if you need help over the course of the week, and we promise we'll get our sea legs under us and get you through this this course.
Okay.
Dr. Shepard, Dr. Rivas, Dr. Stone.
It's all good. Just let us know.
Everybody's good. We had a good night tonight. We got a lot covered. We got a lot covered tonight. If we got through task 2 tonight, we've covered a lot. We'll finish this up next week and get to peer review, and then the following week we'll talk about task stream. We'll have gone through drop add period by then, and Seth will have created your task stream accounts, and I'll teach you how to use task stream. That'll be 2 weeks from tonight. If all goes as planned, well planned. If it's not, it'll be 3 weeks, according to if he stays on his schedule. So either 2 or 3 weeks from tonight, we will cover task stream. So we will definitely get through the app cell by the end of next week, next Thursday night, so that the following week, if they're available, we can talk about establishing and how to use your task stream account. All right.
Dr. Lamb, I want to close with one thing. Take a close look at what Dr. Lamb looks like now, because in about a month and a half, he emerges into Santa Claus for real. So.
Yeah, it started. All right. I'm looking forward to my visits. I'm disappointed I'm not going to get to go see Andrew and Bertie, but over in Greer. But I am going to go to Chase and see Priscilla and Michael, and I scheduled a couple today in Inman. I'm excited about going there. Make sure that you're in contact with your CC1s, that they're sending you emails. Get your visit. We would love to go out and visit with you. Dr. Stedman and I are old and retired, and Dr. Stone, so we're all full time, so we hit the road. So we'll be out visiting.
But I'm
Dr.
not old.
Crawford,
But I'm not old, Dr. Lamb. And just a real quick reminder that a lot of your CC1 coaches are trying to reach out to you, and they're not hearing back from you, and they're freaking out. So they need to know that you are there. So reach out when you get that email for them. Reach out to them. Give them some dates and times. Or if you don't know anything right now, at least touch base with them so they don't think you dropped.
That's exactly.
Janelle RC said she had not heard from any. Let your instructor know if you have not heard, and we will reach out and see what we can do.
Absolutely. Send us an email. If you haven't heard from anybody, email me or your instructor or Dr. Stone. Email Dr. Stone.
Yeah.
Email
W Stone 1.
W Stone 1. Email him. He works with that. He'll. But yeah, you should be hearing those. Yeah, and so yeah. Email Dr. Stone and he'll get that done. All right. We ran a little over tonight. We'll do better next time, but we've had a great time. We thank you all for choosing Gardner Webb, and thank you for working with us and being online with us. We love this. We hope that you will too. And we will see you Tuesday night. Everybody have a good week.
And they'll get their recording later on tonight sometime.
I'll be on it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.